On September 17, 1944, 20,000 paratroopers from Field Marshal Montgomery's Operation Market Garden were dropped into Arnhem inside Holland. They were to secure Holland's bridges so that the Allied army could advance into Germany and bring a quick end to the war. The Dutch decided to assist the Allies by calling on a rail strike, and in just one day most of the rail workers went underground. The rail system had come to an abrupt halt. The strike disabled Germany's ability to transport troops and artillery to prevent the Allies invading through the Dutch corridor. This then exposed the train workers and Dutch civilians to great danger. The cold, hard hand of Nazi Germany quickly retaliated and swiftly punished the Dutch by stopping all food supplies to Holland's occupied territories. Holland was in severe trouble. This led to the Dutch having to find food by any means they could to prevent starvation. Children would scour the bins for scraps, people would eat tulip bulbs, and some would even separate dried horse manure to look for undigested oats for nutrition.
And I can remember that when the horse did its dropping, there was one chap there with a small spade, and he picked the thing up, put it in a bag. And when I asked what he was going to do with it, he said, I'm going to take the oats out of it and cook them for food.
Rural parts of Western Holland were luckier. They could eat food grown in their backyard, whereas the decline of official rations for the densely populated cities of Western Holland incurred severe problems. To add insult to injury, winter was just around the corner. The Dutch were to face yet another winter under German occupation. On September 27, London received the shocking information that the food shortage was quickly getting worse and that there was only enough food in Holland to last just a few weeks. As many as 1,000 people per day were dying from starvation. Sadly, families would even eat their pets in order to stay alive.
All the winter months that it was, but we ate the cat, yeah. But we made minced meat of it. We had a grinder that you could make mince of it, and we made mince of it, of that stripped it off the bones that you didn't know anymore what it was. So we made little balls of it, and we ate the cat as meatballs.
We had a rabbit, of course, that went in a pot, but there wasn't much.
And these people just had nothing, and we couldn't give them anything because we had very little ourselves. But it was absolute desperation. They were eating seagull, and of course when a seagull dies it's usually in a pretty advanced state, so you can just imagine what that must have tasted.
All you could think of was food. And mind you know, I was a teenager at the time. I had rheumatic fever. And the doctor came to see us, not to see me, just to see how I was getting on. And I was sleeping, say, from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till nearly 24 hours. And wherever I'd sit, I'd fall asleep. And the doctor said, if you don't take her out of here, she will die. My mother told me this after the war. So my mother had an aunt living in Steenwijk, which is on the other side of Holland, and there's plenty of food there. And she decided we'd walk there. I think it's about 200 kilometers.
Everybody was very thin, and we ate tulip bulbs, and there was no electricity. Or gas or anything like that. So it was a frightening time.
We were on the edge of starvation in those days.
Australia's 460 Lancaster Squadron was one of the first to come to Holland's aid with food relief. This courageous humanitarian effort was affectionately called Operation Manna.
Well, the Manna drop was brought on because at that time in Europe the German armies were being forced back, and they weren't too keen on leaving things just as was. They were still fighting pretty hard because they're approaching their own homeland. Large areas of Holland were isolated, flooded, and including the German occupation troops who had been surrounded, I suppose, not by the Allies at that stage, but by bloody water.
With only a verbal agreement from the Germans to let the food drops through, the Allied crews were on nervous alert. Apart from flying at a very low, dangerous level of only 200 feet, they were also being constantly trained by the Germans' anti-aircraft guns, which were placed near the 6 food drop sites.
We were concerned that there may have been some renegade types who might have been some of the very young German recruits, from the Hitler Youth and so on, who'd a Lancaster flying over him at 200 feet would have been a magnificent shot. We saw the guns coming around. They sure did follow us. They tracked us.
Yeah, you could see them. It had to be pretty serious for the whole thing to have been carried out.
On the first day of the food drops, 242 Lancasters had set out for Holland. This would be a decisive day for the whole dangerous mission to the allocated 6 drop zones. Together, they were to drop over 500 tonnes of food.
The Bomber Command were instructed to provide Lancaster aircraft and crews suitably loaded up to take food and, mainly food, to these areas. And they were allocated certain areas. Our squadron was allocated the area around Rotterdam.
I would say that it would be a full complement of planes went out on each trip. We personally did 3. I think there were about 5 or 6 done altogether. We had to come in fairly low of necessity to minimise the damage to the food parcels, etc., that we were dropping. My skipper, Peter Mason, was trained as a fighter pilot, and this was a heaven-sent opportunity to come in as low as he could. I think he may have broken the rules a little bit. We did come in fairly low, and we did arrive back in the UK with a branch of a tree attached to the plane.
The first amazing sight was the number of people that were standing on roofs of houses and buildings around the drop zone.
Yes, we felt great joy, and we were all standing outside waving our arms. And I was actually standing on the roof with my brother to begin with. And, we saw some Germans down in the street, and some of them were crying actually with emotion. It was just before the war finished.
Well, I still do remember the great excitement. I mean, sitting on the roof, you could see people down on the square in front of the house where the food drops had taken place, and everybody collecting what was there. People didn't try to steal or move away with some of the goods. They all brought them together so they could be equally divided. It was something that has stuck with me all the years.
They were obviously so pleased to see us. They were waving, and the kids were out, and sheets and stuff from windows. You could see the people were quite frantically welcoming us. You couldn't see whether or not they were hungry, but my God, they were, at death's door.
Then suddenly planes came in. It was a roaring noise that I can remember, and they started to drop things. Turned out later to be food drops.
Most of the gunners had prepared little parachutes with little bundles underneath with chocolate and anything like that might be something that the Dutch hadn't seen for many, many years.
Oh, they helped enormously, because within a day we had something to eat.
Basically, it was for us the end of the war. When we had those food parcels, we knew that that was it. We broke on the drought. Yeah.
I think it's one of the better things that came out of the war.
Were we proud of it? And yes, we were.
We were in Holland recently. My daughter's husband is stationed over there, and we visited a couple of the areas where we believe we did drop food, and met a couple of people who claimed to have received some of it. It was rather nice. You know, we were, as I say, more or less kids, done a few trips, thrilled at the excited, I think.
It was a beautiful ending, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's really an honor, and for me it's a full circle almost, to have you here today, to be able to thank you for what you did for my people and for my country. And I hope you're going to enjoy this lunch and take it as a very small token of appreciation. Thank you very much.